wrong for people to have to, families and family members and friends to have to stand with people and pray with them and not be able to see them provided with what we know this nation has some of the best of. It gets very real just outside to see that. It troubles my spirit in this kind of a nation where we can unite to escalate for war and can't unite to ensure real health care reform with a strong public option that will help everybody. That's a moral crisis. It's a moral crisis when 80 to 90% of senators on either side of the aisle, or legislators on either side of the aisle, can vote for more destruction and killing of people and can't come together to save people's lives. We're here today because we don't need a half of a health care plan. That's what happened to Adam with Social Security. In 1935, they beat up on President Roosevelt so bad, the forces of greed and division, until he scaled back Social Security. And people were left out. And it took years before people were, my grandparents, for instance, were even included, because domestic workers and farmers weren't even allowed in the plan until 1954, 19 years later. But we don't have 19 more years. We don't have 10 more years. People that are dying, 880,000 alone African Americans died in the last 10 years without access to health care. 52% of those without health care are minorities. We don't have time. We don't have time. We need to do this right. We need to do it now. And that's one of the reasons that we're calling so hard on the Senate, because in the Bible says that when people are sick, call for the elders. Well, the word Senate means elders. That's actually what it means in Latin. The word Senate means elders. And it's time for the elders of our political discourse to stop playing games, stop trying to cater to the insurance companies, stop trying to whether this is Republican or Democrat, and deal with what is right. And it's right for all Americans to have health care. It's right to have a strong public option. We sent a letter to, and I want to share it with the media today, to Senator Richard Byrne. We just raised a question with him. Very simply, he said, you and your 99 colleagues have the best health care because you were elected. Why then can't you help everybody get the same thing you have? More than 40% of your voters voted for your opponent, but they're paying for your health care anyway. You receive grace, but can't seem to give grace to people. We talked to Senator Byrne. We said, often you speak on your roots as a preacher's kid. What a blessing it would be if you, a senator, were to return to the ideas your father taught you. Jesus was a nonprofit healer. Do you see his activities as a form of socialism or anti-American? Can't you reach the least of these and make the Senate vote truly not bipartisan endorsement of a new day in North Carolina, a new day in this nation? And then we wrote to Senator Hagan and said we thanked her for the work that she has done, thanked her that she voted that the debate might continue. But we also said to her, Senator Hagan, you profess to be a friend of the poor and people of color in this great state. You received over 90% of African American votes. You know those who suffer the most from the injustice of the current health care system, and minorities are poor. But your statements always seem to be carefully calibrated to appease certain elements of the health industry and careful not to speak to racial disparities and call for a strong public option. Senator Hagan, say the words. Do what's right. I will fight for a strong public option. You're a friend of reform, we know that, but be a friend of real reform, full reform. Because if a person is drowning and they're 12 years out in the ocean, 12 yards in the ocean, and you only throw out a line from the boat that's 10 yards long, they're going to still drown. And that's what's going to happen if we have half a health care reform. That's what will happen if we have reform without a strong public option. Stop trying to find ways not to include people. Stop trying to find the least political group of people. Stop trying to find ways to not deal with the people who you don't think can come to Washington, who won't be able to speak up, and do what is right. This is a moment in history. And more important, somebody's life is dependent on it. So the Senate, you who are the elders, the scriptures say call for the elders when people are sick. So we're calling for the elders, because you will be judged by somebody bigger than the NAACP, and bigger than the union movement, and bigger than healthcare advocates. One day you will have to stand before God himself and say what you did in this moment of history. God help us. God help us as a nation. If we don't do right by that daughter like I just saw out there who can't afford health care and is trying her best to live life and is struggling with a disease, a precondition that she didn't ask for, didn't desire, but she's here. God help us. We often say God bless America, but today I say God help us if the elders don't do right in this moment of history and provide health care for everybody. God help us. Amen.